My name is Larry Lohmann, and I work with a small organization called the Corner House, which does quite a lot of solidarity work and a lot of research as well, which is connected with our solidarity work. We work together with a lot of different groups in a lot of different countries on a range of issues, most of them involving some kind of oppression, many of them involving some kind of racism, some kind of neocolonialism. And it could be on any one of a range of different topics. It could be people fighting against the encroachment on their land of commercial tree plantations. It might be people fighting carbon trading. It might be people involved in struggles over hydroelectric dams or large energy plants. It might be people fighting against the financialization of nature, or people victimized by the projects of large development organizations or even of European governments. So it's a range of issues involving injustices that we're involved with. Well, for example, ecosystem services. This is a new economy, a new kind of trading, where you're trading climate services, you're trading biodiversity services, you're trading things even like spiritual services, supposedly. And this is a new kind of thing which is impacting a lot of people on the ground who are seeing their land taken away for biodiversity or carbon projects, who are seeing their lives affected in many sorts of bad ways by these projects. And the question is, well, where does it come from? And I think this is a question that a lot of people are curious about. And we don't have any answers, any clear answers to this yet. But it's a problem which we're working on. One thing we do know, though, is that it's very much like some of the projects of oppressive projects which we've experienced before. It involves new kinds of land grabs. It also involves the accumulation of capital. It's involved in the whole project of the accumulation of capital in a different way. For example, a lot of ecosystem services projects are intended to provide credits which can be used by different kinds of industry to evade regulation or to exempt themselves from regulation. This is a kind of topic which you need to look at in a larger context, the larger context of capital accumulation, to see what kind of role that these projects play in this larger economy. So I think this is one example of the kind of investigation, of the kind of mutual discussion that we're having with our colleagues. Our first priority when starting to work on a problem of this kind with groups that we trust is to have a discussion and to try to come to some kind of mutual enlightenment, mutual discussion, some kind of process which enables us to learn together. And from then we usually try to strategize together, to try to think of ways of expanding the political space which might be available to the people who are being oppressed by the policy or by the project. And this is, again, a very, a mutual process. A lot of times we're called upon just to join in a discussion which people are already having in order to be able to deal with these challenges more effectively. Well, these are the standard difficulties that I think have faced any groups or any movements or any networks which have been involved in countering oppression, for centuries. We're up against a very difficult range of opponents. One new challenge that sort of faces us particularly in that we're located in Europe in the north is sometimes we have to get used to the idea that some of the people that we thought were our friends and allies are not actually our friends and allies. And we've long had a sort of troubled relationship with what's called environmentalism in Europe and in North America and in the industrialized world. On the one hand, we're used to calling ourselves environmentalists. But on the other hand, we find that in many cases, some of our worst enemies actually are environmentalists of a certain stripe. This has been a very painful lesson to us. We've had to learn to rethink, who our friends are in the struggle against oppression and who are not our friends. And this sort of unsettles or shakes up the usual dividing lines. We find sometimes we're fighting against our so-called fellow environmentalists as much as we're fighting against, the large corporations or the world banks or oppressive governments. When the cry of injustice goes up from a crowd, it's usually an expression of a consciousness in the making. What's happening to us? How can this happen? How does it work? Who is doing this to us? How are they making alliances against us? What alliances should we make? This is sort of a dynamic process of discussion and enlightenment. And it involves what Ashish Nandy, the Indian political psychologist, used to call an expansion in the awareness of oppression above anything else. This is very different from the concept of justice as a sort of technical term or as a sort of what Raymond Williams called a keyword, a sort of ready-made objective which can be achieved, the sort of thing that you can put into any existing project, no matter how oppressive. Let's take this project and make it more just. Let's put a little environmental justice into it. Let's cut down on consumption, for example. Let's make slavery sustainable. That's a very different kind of concept of justice. And for me and for the people that I work with most closely, this is really not the kind of justice we work with. For us, justice is more a process of discovery of oppression and discovery of strategies for dealing with it. If we assume that justice is not a technical term or a sort of ready-made addition which you can pour into any existing project, then there's not really much content that you can assign to that question. I mean, I know what it would be to achieve a future in which children were no longer being poisoned by lead or by dioxin. That's clear. But I can't say that I know what a future in which justice would be achieved is like. Malcolm X always used to say, racism is like a Cadillac. There's a new model every year. And I think this is true of our work as well. I mean, today, achieving a just future might be a matter of, among many, many other things, fighting against ecosystem services and the ecosystem services economy. But who knows what Cadillac will be coming down the road next year. So it's very difficult for me to answer that question in specific terms.